This conference will now be recorded.
Here we go. You see, here we go. So they were not in a good place. What I wanted to show is a picture of a person that, face of a person that probably typifies this scene. I wanted an old person. I wanted an old person that represents a broken spirit. Someone with no faith, someone with no hope. It's all in the eyes, isn't it? Got another picture here. Look at the old guy just staring out into nothing, into oblivion. He has no hope. And I want to express that perhaps in general, and this is how Israel is described in general, they've all lost hope. And for them, they just thought that slavery was it for them. Imagine that, thinking there's no way out of here. It's going to be the case generation after generation in the bitterness of slavery. It's a very dark place to be. However, I'm going to show you some pictures now. I'm going to ask you a question. Do these people look like they have a broken spirit? Do these people appear, are they doing things that represent them having lost their faith? These people have some fight left in them. And I want to be clear, this event happened 80 years earlier than the verse that we just had up there. So other people with faith. Exodus chapter 2. The midwives, very good. Both named. Yes, and we have those ones up there. Who was actually named? Yes, so that's the two midwives. Very good. They were faithful midwives. There was Jochebed was named, and her actions here. Miriam is named. There's another female which is involved in saving people. Daughter of Pharaoh. There's something that connects all these people in Exodus chapter 2. They're all female. So this is just to bring it back for you ladies who feel like you're feeling a bit left out with this whole theme of the God of my father. In Exodus chapter 2, the only male mentioned is a tyrant, and that's Pharaoh, who's destroying babies. So these faithful females, including the daughter of Pharaoh, is involved in saving people and carrying that faith. So much faith, in fact, is that these people, Amram and Jochebed, make it into the book of Hebrews chapter 11, the faith chapter. It's not any faith in Hebrews 11. This is Hebrews 11 spec faith. That's what I call it. Hebrews 11 spec faith. And so Moses, when he was born, was hidden for 3 months by his parents because they saw that he was beautiful. And they were not afraid of the king's edict. So I like that. They were not afraid of the king's edict. Who were they afraid of? The creator of the universe. Pharaoh says, go out and kill the babies, and God is saying, spare the babies. These people are fearing God. They will ignore the command of the most powerful man of the then known world. They are not afraid. That's the level of faith that they had to stand up to him. So what happened after that? Moses was plucked up out of the water in this miraculous God-directed event by the daughter of Pharaoh. And as we read in Acts chapter 7, Pharaoh's daughter adopted him and brought him up as her own son. And Moses was instructed in all the wisdom of the Egyptians, and he was mighty in his words and his deeds. So here's Pharaoh's daughter. she now has, once she has Moses, after he's been weaned, obviously, and I forgot to mention the fact that Moses then ends up immediately from being plucked out of the water straight back to home, back in the arms of Jochebed, being nursed by his own mother, and she's getting paid to do that. They recognise the power of God in that for sure, and it is something astonishing, isn't it? Moses does end up in the court of Pharaoh for sure, and this lady does everything in her power to turn him into an Egyptian. She is committed that this man learns all there is to know, the culture and the arts and the music. Highest level. Have you ever wondered though about Pharaoh's daughter? Like, what's her deal? Like, she seems to me quite far removed from being the most important person. Like, if it was Pharaoh's queen who adopted him, then I'd be thinking, wow, this is really something. Pharaoh's daughter seems just down the line a little bit. And what is actually the biggest deal about Pharaoh's daughter? Well, it turns out I was in for a surprise. Pharaoh's daughter is everything in Egyptian culture. And it all starts from Egyptian mythology, when this goddess, which is Isis, she is known as one of the most powerful gods in the Egyptian mythology. She performs the most amazing magical feats, and she's very highly regarded. She has a husband called Osiris, and in fact she resurrected her own husband because he died in some weird way. But she has the power of resurrection. Osiris is this god of agriculture and the afterlife, and you name it. This god is the god of everything. He's the god of the river Nile that makes the Nile flood, and he's an amazing god. And these are husband and wife in Egyptian mythology. But they are also brother and sister. And as a husband and wife, they come together and they have a child. And their child is Horus, who is a symbol of kingship. So in Egyptian mythology, we have a husband and wife, these powerful gods giving birth to the king. And it just so happens that the sister and the brother, it's their union that produces the king. So the Egyptian kings and queens who thought they were gods too, they embraced this as a custom and a tradition throughout the ages. They too required that the daughter of Pharaoh must be in the line to produce the next Pharaoh. The Pharaoh will have a son, but he also must have a daughter. Those two must come together to have the next Pharaoh. That's how it worked. You didn't have to be pure brothers and sisters. Half brothers and sisters worked. I looked at some of the history. But the daughter of Pharaoh was the kingmaker. Without her, they couldn't produce the next Pharaoh. She had the power to put Moses on the throne through her. So to have the title, the son of Pharaoh's daughter, was actually quite huge. And you might think, he's adopted, so he's out of the runnings. But you've got to remember, Moses is plucked up out of the river Nile. It's a gift from the gods. It doesn't matter. Gods have provided Moses. It's probably better than giving birth. And therefore, she can train him up, turn him into Egyptian, and he is fully in line to be the next Pharaoh. And that is what really surprised me when I looked at Pharaoh's daughter.
Was it literal, the brother and the sister produced the...
This is a myth, and it inspired real things. Inspired the actual kings and queens to do the same. They needed the daughter to produce the seed. So therefore brothers had to... They thought they were gods, the Egyptians. The whole thing. Anyway, so what was interesting about this girl, one more thing, about the time of Moses, about the 18th dynasty, and the third pharaoh. His name was Moses, one, and there was four more of them, Moses or Mose. So think about the name that she chose to call Moses. It was a king's name, wasn't it? So it's almost like she was setting him up to be king for sure. So that's what happened in that 40-year bracket. Now we have to figure out what on earth is going on in the next bit of the story. This happens. Moses, when he was grown up, went to his people and he looked on their burdens. Stephen says, when he was 40, it came into his heart to visit his brothers, the children of Israel. And then this, Stephen says this in Acts 7. He supposed that his brothers would understand that God was giving them salvation by his hand. He took out a Pharaoh an Egyptian taskmaster, and it probably suggests how good he was, or it suggests that he had skills in the military, because he was able very quickly to dispatch probably quite a strong, fit Egyptian and get rid of the body really quickly. He was very likely in military in that particular case, and I would suggest that even more so the next story where Moses saves the daughters of Jethro from those shepherds. He was able to dispatch those guys on alone and sort out that problem. Out this Egyptian guy, but you know what he was thinking? He was going to save the Israelites by his hand. Now, where does he get that information from? Do you get that information from you walking through the courts of Pharaoh, studying religion and military arts, Egyptian spec music and architecture? Where does he get that information from? Somehow the information got through, and the only way that I can see it getting through is by his mum and his dad. When Moses was plucked out of the water, the most amazing thing would have happened in the minds of his mum and dad. God is here. God is present. God has a plan. He's going to save us. That would have been a pretty obvious thing that would have consolidated in their mind when Moses was saved. But there's one more thing that I think that would have happened in their mind. Moses is something to do with this plan of salvation. I feel that quite strongly, that they would feel this baby, and they don't know how, but he is important in terms of this salvation plan. So I believe that his parents wasted no time in letting him know that yes, God is here, he has a plan, he's going to save us, and you are part of it, Moses. I'm pretty sure his dad didn't say, you need to go out and start killing Egyptians. That was all Moses. But the information that he was going to be the saviour of these people was from his parents and no one else. So what we have is a contest. We have an absolute contest between mum and dad and the daughter of Pharaoh and probably her brother, right? So a battle of loyalties, and who seems to have won out? The slaves or royalty? It appears that the slaves influenced Moses. They got under his skin, and he was able to disband all of his Egyptian loyalty and throw himself at these Hebrew slaves without any bother. Where was this information coming from? So we have this battle of influence. We know which one's winning. So what do we know of this plan of salvation? Is there information circulating? What did, in fact, Amram and Jochebed have in their minds that they were able to share to Moses? What was their hope? We have to go back to the God of Abraham, all the way back to this moment where Abraham received the promise. Abraham was asked to cut up all these animals. He fell into a deep sleep. There was a pot of smoking something or other and a flaming fire moving down the centre, and God spoke to him in this vision and said, then the Lord said to Abraham, know for certain that your offspring will be sojourners in a land that is not theirs, and there will be servants there, and they will be afflicted for 400 years. Doesn't sound great, but there's more. and they will come back here in the fourth generation. There's hope. Firstly, this affliction does have its stopping point, 400 years, and they will be back here. 2 points of hope, 2 timestamps to think about. And so this information is given to Abraham, the man himself. And it's really good stuff. But how does that get to Amram? Is my biggest question. So my next question before we answer that question is, why did God choose Abraham? I know you know this because I've already asked this question. Why did God choose Abraham? Says it in the Bible.
Because it was faith.
And your household after you. Talk to your kids about God. Share the information. And so what information was going into his children and to his household was indeed this promise that would be fed from generation to generation. God needed this information to get to Amram. So he started quite well with Abraham, who was known for passing on information. Sometimes it's good to see a bad example with a good example. A bad example of passing information on is in the very same time period of Abraham. This guy. Lot loved God, it says. How much of the information of his love passed on to the people around him? Think about the actions of his sons-in-law, his wife, and his daughters. How much information did they get from their dad about God and Lot's love for God and Lot's experience with God? I don't know if it much filtered through. In fact, Lot's name means to wrap closely or to envelop. The noun of such means secrecy, and the actual word Lot means to cover. His name almost typifies what was happening in terms of how he was covering up his faith for God. His wife didn't get it. His sons-in-law laughed at him when he said this place is going to go under, this Sodom and Gomorrah is going under. And his daughters, well, let's not worry about what his daughters did. His daughters were clearly influenced by what they saw in Sodom. They figured out a solution, didn't they, to carrying on the father's name, and their solution was drunkenness and sexual immorality. I don't think the love for God got through. So, Abraham is completely different, passing on information to the next generation and starting that process, which God relied on. He needed the information to get to Amram and Jochebed. And so why do we have this here now? Ah, yes. So what we can do is we've looked at this little bit of faith in Hebrews 11. What we can do is look at the 3 verses before and see what's going on. You might want to look up, have Hebrews 11 open, because we do spend a bit of time in there. The 3 verses in between Abraham and Moses' parents are these. By faith, Isaac invoked future blessings on Jacob. By faith, Jacob, when dying, blessed each of the sons of Joseph. By faith, Joseph, at the end of his life, made mention of the exodus of the Israelites and gave directions. Is that all there? Think about all the faithful things that Isaac and Jacob, and especially Joseph, did, and they are associated with passing on information. God picks out this little bit about them and puts them in this Hebrews 11 chapter, which is the pinnacle of faith, and it's about passing on information to your kids. That's a measure of faith if we talk to our kids. It's huge. I'm going to come to that, Joseph, but that's quite important. So, the little bit of hope, the 4th generation, was something that I hung on to when I was studying this back in 2021. I wanted to think about the 4th generation. Who's the 4th generation that is going to come back here? Remember, Abraham said, we heard from God that the 4th generation is going to come back. I'm trying to think about the timelines, I'm trying to think about the genealogies and who would be the fourth generation and where do you start, where's number 1 and where's number 4. I just thought this story is about Moses, so I'm going to go right to the end and I'm going to pick Moses as being the fourth generation because he's so important in this. I'm going to see where that takes me. And so we have this genealogy in Exodus, chapter 6, which results in that. From Abraham to Moses, not very many generations actually. Very speedy. And so if I was going to do some maths, I was going to do some fourth generation, if I was going to apply this, I'm going to put Moses as fourth generation. I'm going to put that there. And then I'm going to make up something about why Levi. I'll struggle a little bit about that, but this is what I'm doing. Now, the problem I had with Moses being the fourth generation was that he didn't get back to the land. But that's what was promised to Abraham. In the fourth generation, they will come back here. Moses didn't get back. It was the next generation that got into the land. Is that right, Ruth?
It says that they would come back to the mountain when he's still on fire. It doesn't say that he's going back to the land. Okay, right.
Yeah, good. So how I fixed the problem in my head is listening to Ruth. But when Abraham is getting this vision, he's in the middle of this split animals, sacrifice, smoke, fire. Is God saying, come back here to this particular place, this land of Canaan, or is he meaning come back here to my presence? The presence of God was in that place. And what else happened that was like smoke and fire and animals being split and sacrifice and covenants being made was Mount Sinai. And so yes, Moses could have been very much the fourth generation to come back to this place, the Mount Sinai. And so that's really worked well in my mind. And in the burning bush, God says, you will know that I am with you when you come back here. And he's talking about the mountain where he's standing, seeing the burning bush. He's coming back here with the people to serve me on the mountain, right? So that really fitted beautifully, and Moses being the fourth. And I still really like it, by the way. But the reason why that's powerful is because if Amram and Jochebed knew that, they know that when they're holding this little baby, he's the fourth generation. And they will do everything they can to save him. They had Aaron and Miriam, also the fourth generation, but they weren't born at a time when there were babies. Moses was born at a time when the babies were getting destroyed. So therefore they had to do everything they could to save them, because it's the fourth generation. This is the power of the fourth generation, if we were going along with this. And I was really on board. I do struggle a smidgen with a couple of extra points here. If you compare that genealogy on the left with the genealogy on the right, 1 Chronicles 7 compares Joseph's genealogy from Ephraim. It's the same time period and we have 10 people in there, not 4 people. So it changes things. It makes you wonder whether or not Amram is a descendant of the Kohathites rather than being a descendant of Kohath. But that's not how it reads in Exodus, so I'm trying to figure this out. Because the Kohathites in Numbers 3 are numbered at the Exodus at 8,600. So how on earth can they produce that many babies with those 2 generations? But they could if it was that many generations, 6 or 7. Just going to put that out there. Just trying to make sure that we cover our bases and we have a look at everything around here. So another thing I came to, the 4th generation, and it changes things slightly, is this story. Starting with Terah. Terah is the father of Abraham. Terah was asked of God, would you believe it, to leave Ur of the Chaldees and go to the land of Canaan. He didn't make it to the land of Canaan because he stopped off in Haran. And that is where Abraham started his journey. Can you believe that? Abraham is actually attributed with leaving Ur of Chaldees, but it's actually his dad that left. His dad might have just about started the process. His dad may have heard from God. And Abraham finishes the job. I think that's a little story. If that's in Genesis 11. Yeah, so where was Terah going? He was going to the land of Canaan, just where Abram was supposed to go. But anyway, if Terah's the start of the process, Abraham is one generation, Isaac, the second generation, Jacob is third generation. So who in the fourth generation made it back to the land? Or the mountain of Sinai, for that matter.
Joseph's bones.
Exactly.
That's right, yeah.
But he wasn't alive, but he did get there. Because remember, in Hebrews, he says, you will take my bones when you leave, not if you leave this place, when you leave this place. Joseph makes it back to the land. Joseph makes it to Sinai. So that means that there's a sarcophagus in Egypt. And that sarcophagus has not found its final resting place. That sarcophagus is a symbol of hope that these people are getting out of there. Joseph said, when you leave, you take me. This is going to be a faith-building symbol of hope in Egypt at the time, in that difficult time after Joseph. It's not Moses, it's Joseph, but it connects to the story because that was the bit of faith that Joseph expressed in Hebrews 11 that is then the next, that leads into the faith of Moses' parents. So clearly there may be a connection. That story, this sarcophagus, really boosted the parents' faith. We're flying through the time, so what I'm going to do, I'd love to talk a bit more about 400 years, because that's another time stamp. If the fourth generation wasn't stopped at Joseph, they had more to go on. There was 100 bracket, or 400. You break it up. The point is that there is a timestamp and the parents had it. They had something that they could lean on. They weren't just going to have to wing it. There was a time. So what we want to do now is this information that the parents have got about the salvation of God. They had it. They got it successfully, passed down the generations. They've got the Joseph sarcophagus there. How do they get it through to Moses? I want to give you a verse from Deuteronomy. This is the words of Moses. Before Deuteronomy chapter 11, Moses has said about 10, 11 times, talk to your kids. And this is one of the most coolest ones. And Moses repeats this twice. And it's so good that Solomon takes it and puts it in one of his proverbs. You shall teach them diligently to your children. There and was showing to the people of Israel and Deuteronomy, this is a great thing to do. Or did he experience it? That's a question that I can't answer. Because we know that Moses didn't spend a lot of time with his parents. It's very likely he spent the most amount of time in the court of Pharaoh. So what chance did the parents get to do this with their young man and feed this information to him every second of the day? I can't answer it, but what we do know is the information did get through, right? He disbanded his loyalty to the Egyptians and went with the slaves. So this could have well been a technique of mum and dad. And maybe when Moses was growing up, because it did say, when it came into his heart to visit his brothers, perhaps he visited his brothers more often than he thought to catch up with his parents. And you can imagine if that ever happened, his parents wasted no time. God is here. God is coming. God has a plan of salvation, and you, Moses, are part of it, and we don't know how, but you're part of it. You imagine it. You imagine that the influx of information that he would have received from his mum and dad if he'd ever gone to visit them, just on the off chance every now and then.
There was, though, that little incident with the circumcising of Moses.
This is his kids.
Yeah.
That's a bit later on, eh?
Just saying, following that theme through. Definitely had an issue with his wife. Stephen.
Oh, yep. Different moment in the time of his life then back then, isn't it? It was. You could go, God broke him down. I'm just not sure, where his faith was at that point, for sure. But the point here is Amram must have displayed something to Moses that really influenced him. Yes, Amram and Jochebed gave him information, but there must be more to it. And so I plucked out a psalm which I really liked, and it's from Psalm 28, and it shows someone who has a relationship with God. It's David, but I think it matches quite well. And so the person that has a relationship with God will praise the God, for he has heard our cry of mercy. The Lord is my strength. He is my shield. My heart trusts in him. He helps me. My heart leaps for joy. It's possible with this hope that they had in their hearts, this knowledge that they had of salvation, this sarcophagus of Joseph there, that these people acted differently than your average slave. They acted like they had strength. They acted like they had trust and that someone was helping them. They might have even had joy. In the most worst time, in the bitterness of slavery, there might have been even some joy. I'm just guessing, just putting this out there. But that is powerful, isn't it? As well as getting wonderful information that there is salvation, to have people influenced by God, to have joy in a difficult time is probably more powerful than seeing the daughter of Pharaoh and all of her luxuries have joy. And that's the competition of loyalties that I was talking about. Moses could see something powerful potentially in his parents. And that psalm goes on, which is quite cool. The Lord is the strength of his people, a fortress of salvation. Anointed one, save your people and bless your inheritance. Be their shepherd, carry them forever. Really connects with the people of Israel quite well, that psalm. Let's talk about the influence of Jochebed and Amram on this level here. And we're zoning in on Hebrews 11. We want to now go to the next bit of faith after that, where it's associated with Moses. This is the parents' faith. Now it's Moses. Let's have a look at Moses' first bit of faith associated to him. By faith, Moses, when he was grown up, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. Now we know about Pharaoh's daughter, the lady, the woman that plucked him out of the water, the lady that could put him on the throne. He refused to be called her son. So whose son did he want to be called? Amram and Jochebed. He chose. By faith, he chose. Firstly, by refusing her and choosing them. Let's do the next one. It's connected. It kind of flows on in verse 25. Here we go. Here we go. Chose them. Those people. Choosing rather to be mistreated by the people of God than to enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. So he rejected her and he chose his parents. The first two mentions of Moses' faith is him choosing his mum and dad. Who are the people of God in this? It could be extended to the people of Israel by default because of God's promise to Abraham. The people of Israel are the people of God. But they don't even know God anymore. They have no hope. They have a broken spirit. So the only people of God around are the people that God would say in the burning bush, I am the God of your father. His mum and his dad. So he chooses his mum and his dad. Let's consider the next one. Gets rid of all that luxury and beautifulness and he chooses that. 26, he considered the reproach of Christ greater wealth than the treasures of Egypt. Remember, Paul was writing this to us. So that's why we can have Christ mentioned. He's referring Christ to the reproach of Moses' parents, what they were suffering, the burdens that they were carrying. The reproach of Christ was greater wealth than the treasures of Egypt. Or, it says of Moses, he was looking to the reward. I just want to ask you one question. Moses was looking to the reward. Who was looking for the reward, really? Because Moses had just spent 40 years in the court of Pharaoh, living in luxury. Who had spent their whole life in the bitterness of slavery, who knew of a salvation plan, who were always looking forward, who were always yearning for God's appearance? Who really are the people looking to the reward? It has to be Moses' parents. Moses, yes, of course he's looking to the reward, but he's looking to the reward on behalf of Moses' parents. Like, what is his reward really? Like, he's got it, everything in front of him. And so these 3 verses, after Moses' parents, associated with the faith of Moses, you can see how much they are connected to Moses' parents. In fact, the faith of Moses' parents, not so much Moses. The faith that Moses' parents are influencing on Moses, that Moses is then projecting. I don't know about you, but I used to say everything that Mum used to say back in the day when we were having fellowship arguments. I used to repeat everything Mum and Dad used to say in their arguments because I was quite inspired by Mum and Dad's arguments. I thought they run a good argument. And when I would have my own arguments, I'd just copy everything they say. I loved it. And the people, my cousins in Dunedin, used to hate it because they knew I was saying the same things as my mum and dad. They knew I had studied it myself. I was embracing their faith. I liked their approach. I liked their argument, and I projected their faith. And I sort of see it, it's such a low level compared to this, but I sort of see it in this. He's projecting their faith. And it's getting recorded in the highest level of the faith chapter of the book of the Bible. It's their reward. And we carry on.
Darryn, the Greek word for Christ is Messiah.
Yeah.
Did they think Moses was Messiah? They don't have 3,500 years of hindsight that we have.
You've mentioned this point before, haven't you?
Sorry?
You've mentioned this point before. This is Jackie's little thing. It's good. In the times that people are at, they're looking for the Christ.
Is that why it talks about reproach of Messiah?
That's good. That's really good. Of course. If they really thought that Jesus, the Messiah, the Saviour, why not Moses? Yeah.
Otherwise, what's reproach of Christ mean?
Could have done more. I could have done more on that, to be honest. Yeah. But I'm zoning on. Yeah. No, that's a good point, David. Verse 27. It continues. Moses' faith. By faith, he left Egypt, not being afraid of the anger of the king. Let's put this together. Let's put 23 at the top and verse 27 at the bottom. Let's figure out what's happening. It's the same thing. We have what TJ calls bookends, right? He loves bookends. TJ found this, by the way, for me. We were just looking through this. He found this. Because TJ loves bookends. And he's like, the same thing is repeated. And so we have encapsulated in between verse 23 and verse 27 what we would suggest is not actually Moses' faith, but the influenced faith of his parents. It's bookended. At the start, the parents are not afraid of the king's edict. And now, Moses is not afraid of the king's. They're not afraid of the king. He's not afraid of the king. And the little summary to this bookend in my mind is this next little bit, where he endured as seeing him who is invisible. Who did God see? Who did Moses see? How did Moses see the invisible? I feel like his experience, his parents, helped him to see God working. Remember, Moses is still not at the burning bush. He hasn't even left at this point. This is the parents' faith. His parents are pushing him all the way and giving him this wonderful faith.
You've got a double bookend, you know.
Bookends, double
You've
booking.
got a double bookend. By faith, Moses, when he was born, was hidden, and then he was invisible.
Hidden.
You've also got sight as well.
You need to bring up TJ. You missed that one. I'm sorry, say Juliet.
Oh, you've got sight because in verse 27 he sees who's invisible and they see that he's real.
Yeah. It is. It's a pattern, isn't it? I think even on a more powerful way, that section of scripture is all connected beautifully. And it starts with the faith of Moses' parents. And it continues right through.
Is it higher?
Oh, okay. Okay.
That might be.
Where's the middle point? We need to, okay.
We've got to
We haven't got time to study this. But yeah. Well, let's think about them now.
That's true, Darryn, but at the same time, it's presented in Hebrews 11 as Moses' faith. So it's very obvious that he had taken it on board, internalized it, and it was coming out as his own faith.
Speaking the same things that his parents do. Like he's saying the same things.
Absolutely.
You know, but this is really powerful, by the way. This is powerful because it shows we can induce this level of faith in our children. That level, high level stuff. Yeah.
But yeah, first verse you got up there is the faith of the parents.
Yeah.
I know it says by faith Moses.
That's what I said. That's his parents' faith.
manifested.
Yeah.
All of that is his parents' faith, and I'm suggesting that this is very much a manifestation of his parents' faith. Continuation, and it stops there because the bookends stop, right? I think that's how bookends work. But anyway, what we can do is we can jump into the life of Moses at this point, not long after he's exiled, which is just after this Hebrew 11 quote. Moses fled. He went to the land of Midian. He harbored 2 months. Why would I bring this up? Because his naming of his children is interesting. He names the first one Gershon, which is sojourner. The poor kid. The kid gets his name foreigner. After what his dad's feeling. Now the kid's not a foreigner. The kid is born there. He's at home. He's not a foreigner. He just gets the foreigner name. The only way Gershon can live up to his name is if he leaves home. So that's fine. Moses is feeling quite low. It's quite interesting though. He thinks he's a foreigner in Midian. So where was he at home? Egypt. Oh, so he thinks Egypt is home because that's all he knows. Egypt is home. Wow. Okay. All right. His other son, Eliezer. Do you know what Eliezer means? God. My God is help. Can you believe this? This is what we've been looking for. Remember last week? I was looking for the moment when Jacob said, my God, in his vow. Remember? I will only call you my God after you've done all this. Moses has just called his son, my God is help. Is he getting there? And this is where we're heading. We want to see Moses shift from knowing God as the God of his dad to be his God. But just like this situation, Moses made a comment according to the word. And this is what Moses said. My father's God was my helper. He saved me from the sword of Pharaoh, right? So Moses isn't there yet, but he does give the kid the name my God is help. Moses just attaches my father's God. He doesn't know God yet as his own God. He's working, he's getting close, right? But isn't that interesting? He saved me from the sword of Pharaoh. He was not afraid of the sword of Pharaoh. Just make it It says his dad's faith. So we come to the next bit of faith, which is the Passover. And this is Moses' faith. Now, I was sort of looking in this bit for Moses to say, oh, you are my God, or some sort of connection that really shows it as his faith. But it's all about Moses directing the children to perform this Passover to the exact detail. But in the detail, in the information in Exodus 12, is it? There's a big chunk about Moses saying, share all this information to your kids. This is a symbol. If your son asks you about what you're doing here, you tell him this. And he spends quite a bit of time saying, this is for your children. This must be passed on from generation to generation to generation. And I think that's really beautiful, having just seen Hebrews, Isaac talking to his son, Jacob talking to his sons, Joseph talking to the next generation, Moses' parents talking to Moses, Moses now encouraging kids at the pinnacle of faith. The next bit in Hebrews is what? The Red Sea. It's not associated to Moses this time, it's everyone who went through that Red Sea. That's faith. Something amazing happens at the Red Sea. Moses sang this song. Moses reaches a point when he leads these people through these waters with the help of God. I will sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. Both horse and driver he is hurled into the sea. The Lord is my strength, my defense. He's become my salvation. This is really powerful. This is the words we want to hear. What does he say next? He is my God. And interestingly enough, he attaches it. I will praise him. My Father's God, I will exalt him. The Lord is a warrior. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that wonderful? This is the moment after experiencing all the plagues, the power of God and the greatest miracle ever. He is now embracing God as his own God. But he's still hanging on to the knowledge of the God of his Father, and I reckon that's really valuable. It's something I've never said actually. When I keep talking about transferring from knowing God as the God of our parents and our friends and our brothers and sisters, we never forget the God of those people. Those people are important. The knowledge, the influence that God has had on these people on our lives is still really valuable, and we still know God as the God of these people as our parents. But we move. He goes down to here. The Lord has an indictment against his people. So he shows it here, say? That makes sense. Indictment against his people, and he will contend with Israel. And he says, "Oh, my people, what have I done for you? How have I wearied you? Answer me. For I brought you up out of the land of Egypt and redeemed you out of the house of slavery." And this is what he says. Look, I sent before you Moses and Aaron and Miriam. Probably the most powerful thing that I could put up here this night in regards to these two people. There were three people in the tribe of Israel that stood out as leaders. Three people that influenced the whole nation of Israel, and they were brothers and sisters from the same family. Thank you, Amram and Jochebed, for your three kids. Now, we don't know Amram and Jochebed that much, but we know their kids, and they live on through their kids. Their legacy lives on in what their kids did and what their kids achieved. And this is the power. And it continues. There's more stuff like this one in Psalms. He sent Moses and Aaron, Moses' servant, I should say, and Aaron, whom he chose. So thank you, Amram and Jochebed, for your boys. And one more. Well, way more. This is your son. This is your son. integral, a huge part of God's plan. So I'm just out of time, aren't I? But I do have a little bit of bonus. So I should say the point of all this, and this actually connects anyway what we're saying, but the point of all this is we can induce Hebrews 11 speak faith into our children. And that faith, that is like parrot fashion almost in the children, is good enough to be recorded in a book like Hebrews. It's that good. So it's powerful. And so passing on information to our kids, influencing them, showing them what it is like to have God with us, showing them it's a good thing to have God close. This little bonus starts in Numbers chapter 12 with an interesting little thing. Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses, oh dear, because of the Cushite woman whom he had married, for he had married a Cushite woman. And this is what they said. Has the Lord indeed spoken only through Moses? All of a sudden they're going away from the Cushite woman, but they've got a problem with Moses. They've got a problem. He's married this Cushite woman who is modern day Ethiopian. And they've got a problem with Moses' authority, or at least they should have some more authority. They're jealous, potentially, of Moses' authority. God comes against them in great anger. Wonderful things about Moses, by the way, in this moment in Numbers. How dare you speak against Moses? But why are you not afraid to speak against Moses? And then Miriam becomes leprous like so. And Moses cries out, oh God, please heal her. And then God says something to Miriam, which connects to what we've been talking about, I think. If her father had but spit in her face, should she not be ashamed 7 days? Her father is the same father as Moses. Is this a statement from God to really shame her? Did she have that much respect for her dad, just like Moses had, that this statement from God would have real effect on her? Your dad would be ashamed of you, Miriam, is what God is saying. This is how I'm looking at it, and I hope you think it with some merit in that. It's a very rare saying, father spitting in your face in the Bible. It does pop up 2 or 3 times. Jesus was spat in the face. Very rare people are getting spit in the face in the Bible. And so I just wanted to leave that with you guys. I think we can't ignore that, the connection to her father, and a shameful time for her, and she had to leave the camp for 7 days until the leprosy was left her or was healed from her. One more little thing. Are you hanging in there?
Mm-hmm.
The Cushite woman. We have to talk about this Cushite woman. Yeah. Now, in Numbers 12, I don't feel that would be right because Moses is too busy to be marrying. He's already got a wife and children, and he's got 2 million other children to look after. He doesn't need another wife. So has Moses married this Cushite in that first 40 years of his life while he was at Egypt? Was there another woman in his life, and that was coming, that bugged Moses, his brother, Aaron and Miriam? So where's Cush? It's down here. It's south of Egypt. It's ancient Ethiopia, or around that area. People have tried so hard to make Zipporah the Cushite. There's lots of chatter on the net, lots of information to try and prove that Zipporah is in some way connected to the Ethiopians, and she's the stark woman that Aaron and Miriam are having a problem with. But remember, Moses is married to Zipporah for 40 years at this point. How do they have a problem with her? It's got to be another woman. And she comes from a completely different area to where Zipporah come from. which is Midian. What we do learn from a little bit of history in Egypt is that one of the enemies of Egypt was the Ethiopians. They attacked Egypt, or at least Egypt had to control them in some way. And not only did they control them, but they moved into Kush. They dominated Kush. So much so that some of the Kushite buildings are somewhat inspired by homes. There is a mixture of slaves, not only Semitic slaves, but Ethiopian slaves. The dark-skinned ones, they say, are a mixture of Ethiopian slaves. So they had moved into Ethiopia, and the historians call these prisoners of war because of the war with the Ethiopians. And in some ways, it appears that they were working alongside the Hebrew slaves. Not sure entirely. There's a couple of depictions of what they are saying are Cushite slaves. Egypt has dominated this area. They are down in Kush. They are teaching them the religion. The Kushites speak Egyptian. They worship the Egyptian gods. This is 500 years worth of dominance. Why would it not be possible that if Moses was a military leader, he didn't take for him one of the most powerful Kushite princesses? If you're taking charge of an area, isn't marrying the most powerful woman or one of the most influential women a sign of dominance? So that was something I wanted to put to you. How else do we describe this woman, this Cushite, who is silent in the Bible, apart from this mention of Aaron and Miriam? What was she doing? Why all of a sudden did they bring her up now in Numbers when they were in the wilderness? There is a suggestion that she was disgraced after Moses left Egypt, and so she went to seek him in the wilderness when she found that Moses had left Egypt. And so met him with this awkward meeting. Imagine the awkward meeting. Hello, I'm your wife. I don't know, right? I'm your wife, and oops, you've got a wife, and Aaron and Miriam are not happy with this Cushite princess. Just a big story, a big suggestion. We can't deny it's in the Bible. We can't deny there's a connection there. That was a little bonus feature.
And it appears that she was actually with Moses at this point, and that's why they were criticising her.
Yeah, it really does. Like they wouldn't say it otherwise.
That she stayed with him.
Yeah. But very silent, other than that. And that scene is dominated by Aaron and Miriam actually challenging the authority. And that's really the main problem in that scene with God punishing Miriam. And then the Cushite mention disappears and we never hear of this woman again. Interesting. So, any more comments? We've gone over time. Perhaps we'll close in prayer. And then we'll have to your words and discuss such wonderful events that inspire us to live our lives in accordance with your will and your plan. And we do pray that you will help us to influence the next generation. We need your help. We need your presence so that they can see you working in us, so that they can then continue that process for the next generation until hopefully there's not too many more generations left for when your Son will return. We pray that this time is soon and the Saviour returns to redeem his people. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Are there any questions? Comments?
I was just interested in the crying baby. at the beginning you mentioned about Exodus chapter 2, where it says there about